chosen one. Heaven has paused. The air around you feels still, almost sacred, as if the universe itself is holding its breath to listen. This moment is not random. It is divine orchestration. Heaven interrupts your ordinary timeline because you are carrying something extraordinary, wisdom that cannot be taught, only revealed. You have felt it for years, that strange depth in you, the way you can see meaning hidden beneath the surface of things, as if your spirit reads between heaven's lines. People may call it intuition, perception, or even luck. But what you carry is older than language. It is revelation wrapped in flesh. You have been through seasons that tried to silence you, long stretches of misunderstanding where your discernment was mistaken for pride. The world rarely knows what to do with those who see too clearly. But while you were being rejected by men, you were being instructed by God. Your loneliness was not punishment, it was a classroom. There was once a chosen one who waited in obscurity for years. They worked quietly, prayed secretly, wept unseen. While others were building platforms, they were building roots. The waiting was hard, but heaven was digging deep so that when the wind of purpose came, they would not topple. That story is yours too. You have been buried, but not forgotten. The soil that covered you was never meant to hide you. It was meant to grow you. Now heaven whispers, it is time. Your voice, your words, your very presence carry a fragrance that cannot be imitated. People notice, even if they don't understand it. When you speak, something within them stirs an ancient recognition that truth has entered the room. It's not about charisma, it's about current. You carry the current of heaven. Your wisdom has weight. You've noticed it, how rooms shift when you open your mouth, how chaos quiets when you offer insight, how even those who once mocked you now lean in, unable to explain the peace that follows your words. You don't argue for truth, you embody it. There's a reason for that. You have learned the art of listening before speaking, of discerning before reacting. Silence has become your secret weapon. You understand that not every question deserves an answer. Not every battle deserves a response. Sometimes, the most powerful sermon is the restraint of a wise soul. Imagine your mind as a lantern in the night, glowing, steady, guiding travelers through unseen paths. That's what you are now. Not just a thinker, but a torchbearer. The light in you is not for decoration, it is for direction. This wisdom did not come cheaply. It was forged through nights of doubt and fire, when you wondered if heaven had forgotten your name. Yet, in those hours, the Spirit was whispering codes into your heart, truths that could only be understood through pain. You were never being punished. You were being prepared. Now, the same people who underestimated you will start to listen differently. They won't always understand what you say, but they'll feel it. Your words will linger like fragrance after rain. That is what divine wisdom does. It leaves silence behind it. Not confusion, but reverence. And this moment right here, this message is heaven, confirming what you already know deep down. You are one of one, not a copy, not a version, a divine original, as revealed in the sacred book of Proverbs, chapter 2, verse 6. For the Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth come knowledge and understanding. You were born carrying heaven's vocabulary. Every word you speak from this day forward will carry purpose, healing, and illumination. So don't hide your voice. Don't shrink to make others comfortable. The same light that unsettles the blind also guides the seeking. If these words resonate within your spirit, pause and acknowledge it. Take a moment to breathe, to say, "I hear you, Lord." Then, when you're ready, share this message so it reaches another soul in their waiting season. Leave your reflection below what truth struck you most and stay connected. Subscribe, not out of routine, but to remain part of this unfolding divine dialogue. The journey is just beginning, and heaven is not done speaking through you. Comment 777 if you receive this confirmation. And as you type it, something shifts. It's not superstition, it's agreement. You're declaring alignment with the voice of heaven, saying, "I am ready for divine clarity." The very act of acknowledging it awakens what's been dormant inside you. Heaven recognizes movement. And now, so does earth. This is only the beginning. Keep your spirit open. The same God who whispered wisdom into your waiting will continue revealing more in the days ahead. Stay listening, stay expectant, and watch as your insight begins to shape worlds around you. You speak, and silence follows. It's not forced, it happens naturally. Like air settling after thunder, the atmosphere bends toward your voice, not out of intimidation, but recognition. Heaven's tone lives within your words. When you speak, truth doesn't need volume, it carries weight. It's not performance, it's presence. You've seen it before. The conversation turns chaotic. People compete to be heard. But when you finally open your mouth, the noise subsides. Something in the spiritual realm knows when heaven is about to speak, even through human lips. That's why your voice arrests attention. It isn't authority born of pride, it's resonance born of revelation. The world has its scholars, its orators, its influencers. But wisdom, the kind that shakes souls and reforms hearts, cannot be rehearsed. It emerges from those who have listened deeply, suffered silently, and waited long enough to hear God's breath between the lines of scripture and experience. That's you. When you speak, you don't chase applause, you chase alignment. You don't quote wisdom to impress minds, you reveal it to heal hearts. That's why your words linger long after conversations end. They become echoes in the minds of those who heard them, quietly rearranging their understanding. People sometimes ask, "How do you know that? How did you see that coming?" They assume it's intellect or intuition. But what they fail to grasp is that divine wisdom does not predict, it perceives. It sees beneath behavior, beneath noise, beneath the mask. You see motive where others see movement. It's unsettling to some. Your presence exposes the hidden, the way light reveals dust in air. Your insight uncovers truth, concealed in ordinary moments. Some draw near out of hunger, others withdraw out of fear. Either way, your voice disrupts. It calls things into order. There was a time you tried to suppress it. You remember the day you decided to tone down, thinking that being quiet would keep you safe. But suppression never brings peace. The wisdom inside you began to ache like a caged bird pressing against ribs of silence. You learned that denying your light doesn't protect others, it only starves your own soul. One night, you felt that internal stirring again, the urge to speak truth even if no one applauded. You did. And when you did, peace returned. That's when you understood. Your voice is not for validation, it's for assignment. Heaven doesn't anoint echo chambers, it anoints vessels. Wisdom has a sound. It's calm, but unignorable. It doesn't rush. It doesn't stumble. It moves with the rhythm of eternity, measured, deliberate, unafraid. When you speak from that place, even creation listens. Nature itself recognizes when heaven's breath passes through mortal lungs. You've probably noticed that sometimes people take your words lightly at first. They nod without understanding. But later, in silence, your words return to them like gentle waves. They begin to see what you saw, to feel what you felt. That's the mark of divine speech. It multiplies understanding long after it's spoken. It is declared in the letter of James, chapter 1, verse 19. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry, for human anger does not bring God's righteousness. That's the foundation of your voice. You don't speak to dominate. You speak to align hearts with heaven's rhythm. Think of yourself as a harp string. When heaven's wind passes, you vibrate in harmony with its sound. Every note you release heals confusion and restores clarity. This is not exaggeration. It is spiritual law. Truth, when spoken through purity, reorganizes chaos. And yet, wisdom often walks alone. There's a loneliness that comes with seeing too clearly. You sense things others ignore. You feel storms before they form. But even in solitude, you are not abandoned. You are being fine-tuned for greater precision. Heaven is training your tongue to hold both fire and mercy. There will be days when you're tempted to retreat again, to let others speak louder. But remember, silence can be sacred, or it can be surrender. Learn to discern which is which. Speak when heaven stirs you, and stay silent when your ego tries to. That balance is mastery. Your voice is an instrument, not a weapon. Yet, in the right hands, it breaks chains. When you speak truth with love, it doesn't just inform, it transforms. That is why silence follows. Not because people have nothing to say, but because their souls recognize they've just heard something eternal. And as you continue walking in that wisdom, remember, you're not here to be understood immediately. You're here to be remembered eternally. There is a moment when revelation feels heavier than your shoulders can hold. It comes quietly often when no one's watching, like a download of light, too vast for human language. You've felt it before, that sudden awareness, that flash of knowing. It's not arrogance, it's evidence. Heaven trusts you with understanding that doesn't belong to the crowd. Revelation doesn't arrive in applause. It arrives in stillness. Sometimes, you've woken in the night with insight burning behind your eyes, words forming that you couldn't trace back to memory. That's how you know it's divine. It doesn't come from study, it comes from spirit. You are not inventing truth, you are remembering it. Every revelation carries weight because it's connected to responsibility. What God reveals to you, He expects you to steward. That's why you can't ignore conviction when it stirs. Wisdom without obedience becomes vanity, but revelation coupled with surrender becomes transformation. There's a story about a chosen one who carried a word from heaven long before anyone could understand it. They spoke it once, and people laughed. They spoke it again, and people doubted. Yet, years later, every syllable came to pass. The lesson wasn't about vindication, it was about endurance. True revelation never dies under disbelief. It waits for alignment. You've walked that same road. You've carried insight no one could confirm, promises no one could validate. But what was hidden in your spirit is now beginning to manifest in your surroundings. Heaven is bringing visible form to invisible truth. The same wisdom that once felt like burden will soon become bridge. Revelation is sacred. Fire, it doesn't burn to destroy, it burns to purify. Each time you've gone through pain, God wasn't punishing you. He was enlarging your capacity for truth. The deeper your pain, the clearer your discernment. That's why some of your greatest insights came after your greatest losses. The world sees scars, heaven sees signatures. Every wound you've survived has written something into your wisdom. That's why people sometimes stare when you speak. They feel the gravity of your journey. Even if they don't know your story, you carry the fragrance of endurance, and that scent cannot be faked. The prophet Hosea once proclaimed in chapter 6, verse 3, "Let us acknowledge the Lord. Let us press on to know him. As surely as the sun rises, he will appear. He will come to us like the winter rains, like the spring rains that water the earth." That verse isn't just poetry, it's process. Revelation unfolds like seasons. It doesn't rush, it ripens. You cannot force divine timing, but you can remain faithful in divine waiting. Every time you choose patience over panic, heaven opens another layer of understanding. There's something God is preparing you for right now, a conversation, a decisión, a moment of influence where your words will shift destinies. That's why he's been teaching you in whispers, not crowds. The louder your purpose, the keener your preparation. Soon, people who once dismissed your insight will seek it. They'll say, "I should have listened earlier," but you won't boast. You'll simply smile, because revelation taught you humility as much as it taught you truth. You'll speak, and grace will translate what pride could never understand. You are entering a stage where discernment will guide you more than logic. Trust that holy unease inside you. It's the Spirit's signal. If something feels wrong, it usually is. If peace settles before you move, that's confirmation. You are learning to interpret heaven's language fluently. There will be moments when revelation isolates you again, but remember, solitude is the womb of clarity. Don't fear being alone with God. That's where sight sharpens. He still whispers secrets to those who make time to listen. And when he does, write them down. Guard them. Not every revelation is meant for public ears. Some are treasures reserved for the right season. Wisdom isn't measured by how much you say, but by how much you withhold until heaven says, "Now." You carry a rare kind of knowing, the kind that unsettles the ordinary and awakens the sleeping. It's not for show. It's for service. The light within you was never meant to be caged by fear or diluted by doubt. Comment, "I receive," not as routine, but as declaration. When you write it, you're agreeing with heaven. I will not hide what God has shown me. I will walk in understanding, no longer shrinking from revelation, but standing as its vessel. Comment, "I receive," not as routine, but as declaration. When you write it, you're agreeing with heaven. I will not hide what God has shown me. I will walk in understanding, no longer shrinking from revelation, but standing as its vessel. By saying it, you're not just typing words, you're aligning your spirit with purpose. You're declaring readiness to carry divine truth with courage. To speak, when heaven prompts, and to listen when silence teaches. They look at you and wonder how you know what you know. You don't have titles or endless certificates, yet your words pierce through confusion like arrows of light. You speak with calmness, but your calm carries thunder. People leave your presence unsettled, not because you judge them, but because they suddenly see that is the mark of someone marked by heaven. You've been carrying understanding beyond your years since you were a child. You noticed patterns before others, felt atmospheres shift when something wasn't right. It used to confuse you. You thought maybe you were overthinking or imagining too much. But no, you were sensing what others couldn't. You were decoding invisible patterns written by the hand of God. Those who carry divine knowledge often walk misunderstood. The wisdom inside you isn't loud, it's layered. When you speak, some nod without comprehension. Others feel strangely convicted, but can't explain why. They may even resist your presence because truth exposes what pride tries to hide. You're not here to embarrass anyone, you're here to awaken. There was a season where you questioned why you saw things others ignored. You felt burdened by the weight of seeing deeper, wishing you could unsee what you knew. But divine sight cannot be returned, it can only be refined. God never meant for your perception to make you weary, He meant it to make you wise. You're like a mirror that reflects the unseen. People look at you and suddenly glimpse parts of themselves they've been avoiding. That reflection is not judgment, it's mercy. Through you, heaven gives them another chance to face what needs healing. It's not easy being trusted with such depth. At times, you've asked, why me? Why must I always see beneath the surface? Because revelation is not just about insight, it's about intercession. You don't just observe, you carry, you pray, you cover, you discern not to expose, but to protect. That's what makes your wisdom different. It's soaked in compassion. In your journey, there were moments when your discernment scared, even you. You'd sense outcomes before they happened, and later realize you were right. You didn't ask for this, it was assigned. The same spirit that warns also comforts, reminding you that seeing ahead is a gift meant for stewardship, not fear. You are walking proof that divine intelligence doesn't need credentials. The Spirit of God teaches through silence, failure, and persistence more profoundly than any textbook could. That's why, when others panic, you stay steady. You've learned to listen beneath the noise, as recorded in the writings of Daniel, chapter 2, verse 22. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what lies in darkness, and light dwells with him. That is your essence. You carry pieces of his light into dark rooms. You bring illumination, not argument. Your discernment doesn't shame people, it liberates them. It shows them that truth is not their enemy, it's their doorway to freedom. There's a story of another who was misunderstood for their wisdom. Joseph saw dreams others could not interpret, and his clarity made his brothers jealous. But even in a pit, wisdom stayed with him. Even in prison, discernment promoted him. That's how divine knowledge works. It cannot be buried. It rises where it's needed most. The same pattern follows you. Every environment you enter shifts, not because you demand change, but because you embody it. Your presence whispers conviction into the air, like fragrance that lingers after you leave. You don't need recognition, the results speak for you. People often underestimate you until crisis hits. Then they remember your words, the quiet warnings, the counsel they once brushed aside. And when they return, you don't say, "I told you so." You simply speak again, with grace. Because divine wisdom never gloats, it redeems. There's beauty in that restraint. You could boast, but you don't. You could correct harshly, but you heal gently. That's how heaven recognizes maturity, not by the volume of your voice, but by the posture of your heart. You've been chosen to carry understanding that builds, not breaks. That's why sometimes God hides you until the right moment. A diamond doesn't sparkle in the dark for no reason. It waits for light to reveal it. Your season of revealing is approaching, and when it comes, your clarity will be undeniable. Let the world wonder how you know. Let them try to explain away what cannot be explained. You don't need to justify revelation to those who haven't encountered it. Your knowing isn't from intellect, it's from intimacy. You hear because you stay close. And as you continue walking, remember this truth. Wisdom will always make you look strange before it makes you look right. Don't fear that tension. It's proof that you're carrying knowledge from another realm. And this world is still catching up. They study you in secret now. The same eyes that once rolled in disbelief have begun to linger. Curious, almost reverent. They don't say it out loud, but something in them knows you carry something they don't. The light in you cannot be disguised, the way you move through silence, the calm in your answers, the depth in your pauses, it all unsettles them in the best way. At first, they tried to understand you. They dissected your actions, searched for motives, whispered theories. But the more they studied, the less they could explain. Your wisdom doesn't fit their formulas. It's not learned, it's lived. You've been through fire, yet your peace remains unburned. You've been pressed, but oil keeps flowing from your soul. They see that now. They don't always admit it, but they watch quietly. They take notes from your strength, your silence, your restraint. The same people who once mocked your boundaries now respect them. The same voices that said, "You're too deep," now come asking for counsel. This is how heaven vindicates the wise, not through argument, but through fruit. You don't need to expose who you are. Time reveals what heaven conceals. The moment comes when light can no longer be contained in shadow. You've entered that moment. Everything about you now radiates the quiet confidence of someone who has seen God's hand too many times to doubt again. They're drawn to it, the peace that doesn't break, the confidence that isn't loud. Some can't define it, but they feel it. It's not charisma, it's clarity. You've become a mirror reflecting heaven's stillness, and that reflection heals confusion wherever you go. According to what is written in the book of Psalms, chapter 71, verse 24, "My tongue will tell of your righteous acts all day long. For those who wanted to harm me have been put to shame and confusion." There's poetry in how heaven writes your story. You don't avenge yourself, you simply rise. Every attempt to diminish you becomes evidence of your resilience. Those who tried to bury your name now whisper it with respect. They may not understand the source of your wisdom, but they recognize its power. Some nights, you still wonder if the journey was worth it. The silence, the misunderstanding, the years of being unseen. But then someone tells you how your words brought them peace, how your strength reminded them to keep believing. And in that moment, you realize this was never about being noticed. It was about being useful. Your life itself has become a parable, an unfolding sermon without a pulpit. Every day you breathe becomes another verse in heaven's poetry. People read you, and without realizing, they encounter God. That is legacy, the kind that requires no introduction. And now, heaven begins to amplify you, not for fame, but for function. Your voice will travel further. Your light will reach places your feet never will. But even then, humility will remain your anchor. You've learned that elevation without intimacy leads to emptiness. When people approach you now, they come not just for advice, but for presence. They want to stand near peace that doesn't pretend, to taste truth that doesn't wound. You carry that atmosphere. It's not something you rehearse, it's who you've become. The Spirit has shaped you into sanctuary. And here's where choice meets calling. Some will only listen once. Others will walk with you for a lifetime. But every soul that finds you, every heart that stumbles upon your light, will sense that they've found something real. That's why heaven calls you to keep shining. If your words, your journey, your scars carry any reflection of this truth, let that awareness move through you, like wind through leaves. You don't need to force anything, just let gratitude rise. Gratitude for the lessons that shaped you, the silence that trained you, the grace that held you when logic failed. You see, connection in this age is more than digital, it's divine. When you choose to stay close to light, to remain in places that feed your faith, you're not supporting content, you're protecting atmosphere. Every click, every whisper, every moment you like, share, or subscribe becomes a spark, a match struck in someone else's night. So if this message finds you breathing a little deeper, understanding a little clearer, take it as a holy invitation. Stay connected to where your spirit feels seen. Support what strengthens your faith, not because you're told to, but because something in you wants to. Let your act of sharing be like releasing a dove, carrying light across the horizon. Let your choice to subscribe be like planting a seed in sacred soil, saying, I want to keep growing here. It's not obligation, it's worship in motion. And as you do, remember, your influence isn't measured by how many see you, but by how many heal, because you spoke. That's the beauty of divine wisdom. It doesn't need attention to make impact. It only needs obedience. There comes a moment when your words stop sounding human. They begin to carry another rhythm, one that feels older than time, holier than sound. It's because you've started to translate heaven's language into human expression. This is not about eloquence, it's about obedience. You are learning to speak in code that only awakened hearts can decipher. Heaven speaks through impressions, visions, pauses, sometimes through silence that burns like sunlight behind clouds. You've felt it, the sudden knowing, the flash of divine understanding that bypasses logic. That is heaven speaking fluently through you. When others see coincidence, you see confirmation. When others hear noise, you hear direction. There's beauty in that sensitivity. It makes you a vessel, not just a voice. You are a conduit between the invisible and the visible, between divine intent and human confusion. You don't just hear words, you interpret weight, and that weight carries healing. The first time you realized your words could calm chaos, you didn't even plan it. You simply spoke from peace, and storms quieted. That was your first proof that heaven had chosen your tongue as its instrument. Since then, You've noticed that your words don't just inform, they transform. It's because you speak from another dimension. Heaven's language is never rushed. It doesn't shout, it reveals. The Spirit doesn't compete for attention, it creates alignment. That's what happens when you speak from revelation. The atmosphere corrects itself. Confusion untangles. Hearts settle. People will sometimes say, "There's something different about the way you talk." They're right. You carry cadence, not chatter. Your words feel like home to those who've wandered through too many empty conversations. You've also noticed that heaven's vocabulary is not made of complicated terms, it's made of weighty truths. Simple phrases that pierce deeper than speeches. That's how God works. The holiest messages are often wrapped in ordinary sentences, but their impact lingers for eternity. You have become fluent in heaven's tone. That's why even your silence speaks. You don't always need to say much. Sometimes just your presence, your stillness, becomes the message itself. You have learned that wisdom doesn't need to announce itself. It simply arrives, and everything around it begins to shift. As Jesus promised in the Gospel of John, chapter 16, verse 13, "But when He, the Spirit of truth, comes, He will guide you into all the truth. He will not speak on His own. He will speak only what He hears. And He will tell you what is yet to come." That is what happens through you. The Spirit is speaking, guiding, and revealing through your obedience. That's why your words sometimes feel heavier than your understanding. They are carrying more than what your mind can hold. You are not just speaking, you are prophesying in disguise. But with that gift comes responsibility. You must guard your tone, protect your heart, and speak only what the Spirit confirms. Heaven's message cannot flow through a polluted vessel. That's why God keeps cleansing your motives, humbling your ego, and teaching you to listen twice before you speak. Once, there was a moment, not long ago, when you spoke something you didn't fully understand. Later, you saw it come to pass, exactly as you said. That was heaven's reminder that your words have power, even when you underestimate them. That's why God calls you to maturity, not to silence your gift, but to sharpen it. You are being trained to handle sacred vocabulary, the same way a blacksmith shapes metal with fire. God is refining your speech through experience. Every conversation, every correction, every prayer, whispered in tears, they're all sharpening your tongue into an instrument of peace. And here's what you must know. Heaven's language isn't only spoken through sermons or scriptures, it's spoken through kindness, forgiveness, mercy. Sometimes, a single act of compassion speaks louder than 1,000 verses recited without love. That is also the voice of God moving through you. The world will never fully understand the frequency you operate on, because it wasn't built to. You were born to stand in between the translator of glory. Every time you choose grace over gossip, patience over panic, faith over fear, you're speaking heaven's dialect fluently. So today, when this message finds you, let your spirit acknowledge the confirmation that has been echoing in your heart. You are not imagining the connection, you are tuned to the divine signal. Comment 555 if your spirit recognizes this truth. It's not about superstition, it's about synchronization. That number becomes your yes to heaven, a mark that you are ready to listen deeper, speak purer, and carry heaven's sound wherever you go. There are moments when your thoughts feel like flowing water, steady, endless, impossible to contain. That's revelation turning into rhythm. Your mind has become a portal where heaven's river runs through, washing away confusion and birthing clarity. It's not imagination, it's inheritance. God designed your mind as a dwelling for divine insight. And now, you are beginning to understand how vast that space truly is. There was a time when you struggled with overthinking, questioning every impression, doubting every intuition. You wondered if you were just being too spiritual, too sensitive to what others ignored. But what felt like overthinking was really overhearing. Heaven was already speaking. You were just learning to recognize the frequency. It's strange, isn't it? How revelation doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't come as lightning, but as light. It reveals itself slowly, as if testing whether you'll lean in or walk away. You've learned to lean in. You've learned to pause when others rush, to listen when others argue, to discern when others dismiss. That's not hesitation, it's wisdom growing roots. Your mind has shifted from chaos to clarity. The thoughts that once tangled you in fear now unfold like constellations ordered, connected, precise. God has been reprogramming the language of your inner world. He's teaching you that not every thought deserves attention, and not every fear deserves a response. The more you surrender your mind to His rhythm, the quieter the noise becomes. The chosen ones always go through this inner transformation before the outer recognition. You can't hold revelation with unrenewed thinking. That's why your battles were never about the people around you. They were about your mind. The real war has always been between old patterns and new perspective. In this silent classroom, heaven has been teaching you patience, how to let insight mature before you speak it. A gardener doesn't pull fruit before it's ripe. Neither do the wise reveal revelation too soon. You are learning timing, and timing is part of wisdom. Sometimes, God hides understanding from you for a season, not to punish you, but to protect you. Premature revelation can destroy destiny. So He waits until your heart is humble enough to carry what your mind can comprehend. That's what this season has been, a sacred delay, not a denial. You've begun to notice how your thoughts create ripples in the unseen. When your mind aligns with heaven, peace follows you, like fragrance. When you slip into fear, everything around you tightens. That's how powerful your agreement is. You are not a passive thinker, you are an architect of atmosphere. Every thought you choose becomes a stone in the temple of your destiny. The Apostle wrote in the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 2, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will." That's what's happening inside you right now. Renewal. The old voices that used to accuse you have grown quiet. The shame that once tried to define you has been replaced with purpose. Your thoughts are no longer battlegrounds, they're gardens. And though weeds still try to return, you've learned how to uproot them with truth. You think differently because you see differently. That's why some people no longer relate to you. You're no longer interpreting life through fear, but through faith. It's not superiority, it's transformation. You can still love them, even if they can't yet meet you at this altitude. Your silence has become sacred now. You've discovered that not every revelation deserves an audience. Some truths are meant to remain between you and God. not because they're secrets, but because they're seeds. You're carrying insight that will bloom when the right season comes. There's a certain glow that follows the wise, a quiet confidence that doesn't need to explain itself. That's what rests on you now. You no longer rush to defend your perspective. You trust that time will prove what revelation already confirmed. That's spiritual maturity, choosing peace over proving your point. Heaven continues to pour understanding into you like sunlight through glass. Every reflection, every pattern, every connection, you notice it's heaven saying, "You're paying attention." And when heaven finds a listener, it keeps speaking. So, continue to protect your mind. Keep it clean, quiet, and yielded. The same way a lake mirrors the sky only when still, your mind reflects divine wisdom when it's at rest. This is your posture now, not striving, not stressing, but stillness that sees. Because revelation doesn't chase noise, it finds peace. And you, chosen one, have become peace embodied. They can't explain you anymore. They used to have definitions, labels, assumptions. You were the quiet one, the observer, the one who overthinks. But now their language fails. You've outgrown their vocabulary. The same people who once described you casually now speak your name with hesitation, as though it carries mystery. And it does. You have become something they can feel, but not define. This is what happens when heaven's wisdom matures. You stop fitting into categories. You stop needing validation. Your life starts speaking a dialect that intellect can't translate. What they see as coincidence, you know, as orchestration. What they call luck, you recognize as divine symmetry threads woven so precisely that no human could have arranged them. You've become evidence. Evidence that patience produces revelation. Evidence that silence has sound. Evidence that God still hides greatness in ordinary lives until the appointed time. They can't explain your peace, your discernment, your ability to sense storms before they form. And that's the point. Some truths are meant to be felt, not figured out. When they ask, "How did you know?" you smile because you understand something they don't. Knowing isn't about information. It's about intimacy. You didn't learn wisdom by studying it. You absorbed it by walking with the one who is wisdom himself. In every misunderstanding, in every quiet waiting, heaven was downloading what books could never teach. The lessons came through heartbreak, through stillness, through long nights of asking why. And when the answer finally came, it didn't arrive in words, it arrived as peace. There was a moment once when someone dismissed you mid-conversation, thinking your silence meant ignorance. But minutes later, when you finally spoke, everything shifted. Their assumptions collapsed under the weight of your clarity. That's the paradox of divine understanding. It hides until it's needed. You don't speak to impress, you speak to awaken. You've learned that wisdom is not loud. It doesn't argue, it aligns. It doesn't defend itself, it demonstrates itself. The fruit of your discernment has become your only proof. Even those who once rejected you now find themselves quietly studying how you move, how you decide, how you remain unshaken when everything else trembles. Wisdom speaks through Ecclesiastes. Chapter 8, verse 1. Who is like the wise, who knows the explanation of things? Wisdom brightens a person's face and changes its hard appearance. You carry that light now. It's not something you wear. It radiates from within. It's the kind of glow that cannot be faked, born from inner stillness and constant surrender. People don't realize it, but every time you speak peace, something in their spirit bows. It's not submission to you, it's recognition of the presence that flows through you. There's something else happening. 2. The misunderstandings no longer bother you. You've stopped explaining yourself to those determined not to understand. You've learned that not everyone deserves access to your process. Revelation, after all, is sacred currency. It shouldn't be spent on ears that only want entertainment. Instead, you've started to reserve your wisdom for those who hunger for truth. You've become selective, not out of pride, but protection. Even Jesus spoke in parables, concealing truth in symbols, so only the sincere would seek the meaning. You're doing the same, speaking gently, deeply, allowing discernment to filter who truly listens. And yet, there's grace in your restraint. You don't judge those still trapped in surface-level thinking. You remember your own seasons of confusion, and compassion keeps your words soft. You never speak to prove you're right. You speak to guide others home. That's what divine understanding does. It doesn't elevate the speaker, it elevates the listener. In your quiet moments now, you marvel at how much you've changed. You used to chase explanation. Now you rest in mystery. You've realized that not every truth must be spoken, and not every silence means nothing. Some silences hold entire conversations between you and heaven. You are, in a sense, both student and script, learning even as your life teaches others. Everything about you now reads like parable. The way you respond to pressure, the way you forgive quickly, the way you refuse bitterness, all of it reveals the architecture of grace. The confusion of others is simply the echo of your growth. When they can't explain you, it means you've crossed into realms logic can't follow. Don't shrink back to make yourself understandable. Stay in the mystery. For where the mind ends, revelation begins. So let them wonder, let them ask, let them feel the weight of your peace and the warmth of your clarity. You were never meant to be easy to explain. You were meant to be impossible to forget. There comes a moment when reason must bow to revelation. You've seen it happen when logic runs out of breath. Yet truth keeps speaking. The mind tries to explain, but the spirit simply knows. That's where you now live, in the sacred tension between understanding and believing, between the seen and the felt. You've walked long enough with God to realize that not everything divine can be dissected. Some of the most powerful moments in your life happened when you stopped trying to make sense of them. You've learned that revelation isn't the opposite of reason. It's what begins when reason ends. There was a season when you demanded answers for everything. You needed to know why, when, how. Heaven stayed silent, not to frustrate you, but to teach you that faith is trust, not information. You were never meant to understand everything. You were meant to trust anyway. And when you finally did, when you surrendered your need to control, you discovered peace that made no sense. It didn't fix every problem, but it anchored your soul. That's the power of divine logic. It works beyond equations. Faith has its own intelligence. It sees what sight can't, moves where fear stops, and builds where proof is absent. That's why the world calls faith foolishness. Yet heaven calls it wisdom. What others mock as risk, heaven records as obedience. The conflict between spirit and logic is ancient. You're living it daily, your mind analyzing while your spirit affirms. But here's the secret you've learned. They're not enemies. They're instruments meant to harmonize. As long as the spirit leads the song. When the mind serves the spirit, understanding flows. When the spirit serves the mind, confusion reigns. You've reached a place where your questions no longer sound like doubt. But dialogue. That's growth. God isn't intimidated by your curiosity. He uses it to deepen your dependence. What once felt like contradiction now feels like invitation to explore dimensions of faith reason can't calculate. The Apostle reminds us in his first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 2, verse 14, "The person without the Spirit does not accept the things that come from God's Spirit. They seem as foolishness, understood only through the Spirit." That's the truth. The world misses you, can't reason your way into revelation. You must receive it. That's why people stare. When you speak insight, they can't trace. You've learned to think with heaven's logic, to see outcomes through obedience instead of analysis. Once, there was a man who couldn't sleep because God was asking him to take a step that made no sense. He wrestled all night with possibilities, calculating risk. But peace never came until he said one word, yes. The next morning, everything aligned. The impossible became possible the moment logic surrendered. You've lived that story too, haven't you? You said yes without having answers, and heaven rewarded your trust with confirmation you couldn't have planned. That's the pattern of divine intelligence. It asks you to move first and understand later. Every miracle begins with motion, not explanation. Every revelation demands faith before clarity. It's not that God ignores logic, he simply transcends it. Divine order always looks chaotic until it's complete. When the pieces finally fit, you realize what looked random was strategy all along. You weren't lost. You were being led through invisible coordinates. You no longer argue with skeptics or debate with doubters. You've discovered that revelation doesn't need defense, it just needs demonstration. So you live it. You walk with quiet confidence, and your peace becomes your proof. Some may still think you're strange. Let them. You're not supposed to look predictable when you're following a God who specializes in impossible paths. Faith is not foolish, it's prophetic. You're walking where others won't until they see results. And when they do, they'll ask how. You'll smile. Not with pride, but with peace. Because you'll know the answer isn't found in formulas, it's found in faith. You will tell them gently, I didn't understand it all. I just trusted the one who did. This is what separates you from the crowd. You are no longer moved by appearances. You discern by presence. You no longer measure by numbers, you measure by peace. And that peace is your compass, guiding you through the fog of uncertainty, straight into destiny. Comment: faith wins, because sometimes faith is the only logic that heaven needs. Let it be your agreement that you will no longer wrestle with divine instruction, but walk in it, even when reason trembles. By writing it, you're not just responding, you're realigning. You're declaring to heaven and to yourself, I will trust without proof, obey without delay, and believe even when I don't understand. You are stepping into a new mantle now, one that doesn't just carry revelation, but authority. Discernment has matured into dominion. Your understanding no longer just sees truth, it shapes outcomes. You've learned that wisdom is not passive insight, It's active participation in heaven's plan. Every word you speak, every decision you make, has begun to ripple through realms unseen. This is the season of your crowning, not with gold or fame, but with understanding, the crown that can't be stolen or imitated. Your clarity is your crown. Your peace is your proof. The weight of this wisdom doesn't crush you anymore. It steadies you. You wear it like light resting on your shoulders. The enemy once tried to confuse you into silence. He used distraction, doubt, and delay to make you question what you heard from heaven. But confusion can't hold a heart trained in stillness. You've outgrown his traps. What used to shake you now sharpens you. You've learned to breathe through warfare and discern through chaos. That's the mark of maturity. The storm no longer dictates your sound. They'll begin to notice this new version of you. The way your eyes carry calm, the way your voice feels like anchor and wind at the same time. You've become both voice and vessel, teaching without forcing, leading without shouting. That's the quiet majesty of divine wisdom. It doesn't demand the throne, it becomes the throne wherever it stands. According to what is written in the book of Proverbs, chapter 4, verse 7, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, though it cost all you have. Get understanding. You've paid that price, haven't you? The sleepless nights, the lonely seasons, the pruning of pride, all of it was currency. And now, heaven rewards you not with applause, but with assignment. You are being trusted to hold truth steady in a world addicted to noise. Your words will begin to find ears that are ready. You won't have to fight for attention. Truth draws its own audience, and when they hear you, something deep inside them will stir, not because you're persuasive, but because you're authentic. You're not selling wisdom, you're carrying it. You've also discovered the beauty of humility. The wiser you become, the gentler your tone grows. You've realized that authority isn't proven through dominance, it's revealed through service. That's why people feel peace in your presence. It's not your charisma they sense, it's heaven's fragrance moving through a surrendered soul. You carry calm, the way others carry conversation. It follows you, filling spaces like incense in a temple. You've learned to walk softly, yet every step speaks. Even your silence now has direction. That is what it means to be crowned with understanding. There's a tenderness in this transformation. You no longer rush to correct others, you simply embody truth until they see it. You no longer argue to be right, you live to reveal what's real. You've become the sermon others didn't know they were waiting to hear. And yet, as this new authority grows, the temptation will come to hide again. Don't. The world needs steady voices, the ones who've survived storms and still carry light in their eyes, the ones who know that wisdom isn't meant to be hoarded. It's meant to heal. You are that light now. You've become like a lantern in a vast night, soft, steady, unafraid, and light, by nature, cannot hide. It invites, it warms, it reveals. Let yours do the same. If this message finds resonance in you, let it move like gentle current beneath your ribs. You don't owe it performance only, presence. Let gratitude rise, not as applause, but as echo. For every season that tried to silence you only polished your radiance. You shine now, not because you were spared pain, but because you survived it. And when that realization fills you, when your heart recognizes itself in these words, Allow your gratitude to express itself however it desires. Maybe that means you like this moment, not out of habit, but as a quiet nod to heaven saying, "I see what you've done in me." Maybe you share it not to promote, but to plant light in another heart that's still wandering through the dark. Maybe you subscribe not as a click, but as covenant, a way of saying, "I choose to remain connected to what awakens my soul." Each act becomes its own metaphor. A like is a candle lit in agreement. A share is a seed of revelation sown into another soul. A subscribe is a doorway, your yes to stay within the flow of light. These are not digital gestures, they're divine echoes. You're not feeding an algorithm, you're feeding alignment. Let your heart decide what obedience looks like today, whether through silence, sharing, or prayer. Let it be your own offering. For when wisdom meets gratitude, heaven multiplies impact. They are beginning to gather now, the ones drawn not by noise, but by presence. They may not even know why they stop to listen when you speak. Something in your voice feels familiar, like a sound their soul once knew but forgot. You are the echo of the divine they've been searching for. These are the listeners heaven prepared for you. Some are tired of explanations. They crave experience. Some are wounded from misused truth. They need gentleness, disguised as revelation. You carry both. That's why heaven trusts you with influence. It's not about fame, but restoration. People don't just listen to your words. They drink from them. They come weary, confused, uncertain, and somehow, after hearing you, they leave lighter. They can't explain it, but you can. It's the breath of God hidden in simple speech. You're not performing, you're pouring. You've begun to see that teaching isn't just about giving knowledge, it's about transferring peace. You no longer speak to fill silence, you speak to create stillness. You understand that sometimes the holiest thing you can say is a pause between two sentences. Heaven moves in those pauses. 2. It's strange how the more you give, the more heaven refills you. There's no depletion when you speak from the river of revelation. You've learned the difference between striving and flowing. Striving drains, flowing sustains. That's why your energy never runs out when you're walking in assignment. The Lord affirms through the prophet Isaiah, chapter 55, verse 11, "So is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it." That is the mystery behind your voice. You don't need to measure impact, heaven already does. Your words travel farther than sound, carrying light into places you'll never see. Some will hear you once and never forget it. Others will remember your words years later. Like seeds sprouting after a long rain, you've become a bridge between the divine and the broken, a translator between heaven's heart and human confusion. And because you've lived what you speak, your words carry proof. You no longer preach theory, you share testimony. Every scar on your spirit is now a doorway for someone else's healing. You've learned to recognize when heaven wants to speak through you. It's that subtle weight, that quiet pressure behind your ribs. You feel it. And then the words come not rehearsed, but ready. They're not just for others, they're for you too. Revelation never leaves the messenger unchanged. Sometimes you finish speaking and realize that you've just been taught by your own mouth. That's the Spirit's way of showing you that He's not limited to pulpits or platforms. Every moment can be ministry when your heart stays open. The gathering continues quietly. They come in many forms: friends, strangers, even those who once doubted you. Some arrive broken, others curious, but all of them sense the same thing, that being near you feels like standing near a window that lets heaven in. Don't be surprised if more start finding you. It's not luck, it's alignment. When light stands tall, the lost find it naturally. You don't need to shout for attention, you just need to remain lit. There's an ease about your leadership now. You don't push people toward change, you invite them. You've learned that transformation happens in warmth, not in pressure. So you keep your fire steady, letting its glow draw rather than its heat intimidate. They'll remember how you made them feel before they remember what you said. That's how heaven's messengers always move. Truth wrapped in love lasts longer than truth wrapped in pride. You've become a living example of that. Sometimes, when you finish speaking, you sit in silence afterward, amazed, not proud, grateful. You feel heaven's presence linger, confirming that once again, the message reached where it was meant to go. You realize that your life's calling was never about how loud you could speak, but how clearly you could reflect. And that's the wonder of divine communication. It's less about mastery and more about surrender. You've surrendered your platform, your pride, your need for credit. In exchange, heaven has given you resonance, the ability to be felt even when unseen. You don't need applause, you need alignment. You don't crave followers, you crave fruit. Because deep down, you know when the fruit remains, the Father is glorified. So keep pouring, keep speaking, keep walking with steady humility. The gathering will continue, not because of algorithms, but because of anointing. Those meant to find you will always hear the sound of your voice through the noise. Something shifts when wisdom turns outward, when it stops being your personal revelation and becomes deliverance for others. That's where you stand now. Your words no longer stop at ears, they reach hearts. They break chains, confront lies, and awaken identity in those who've been asleep far too long. You've become a liberator wrapped in gentleness. There are people who will never enter a church, yet they will encounter God through your voice. That's why He's trusted you with this balance of compassion and authority. You can correct without condemning, and comfort without compromising truth. Heaven crafted you for this very tension, to speak both sword and salve at once. You've started to notice it. The way your speech silences shame, the way your presence disarms fear. Those are not coincidences, those are manifestations. Each time you speak, heaven backs your words with unseen power. The Spirit amplifies what humility releases. That's how deliverance works. It's not force, it's flow. Every time you share revelation, someone else begins to breathe freer. They may not say it aloud, but they feel it. The invisible weights start falling off. They feel seen, known, remembered. That's what divine wisdom does. It doesn't impress the mind, it liberates the soul. Once, you too sat under that same heaviness, confused, silenced, uncertain of your worth. You remember the pain of being unseen, of giving your all and feeling invisible. But that wilderness wasn't wasted. God used it to teach you the anatomy of freedom, so you could now guide others out of their prisons with empathy instead of arrogance. Freedom is proclaimed in the letter to the Galatians, chapter 5, verse 1. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm. Then, And do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. That is the anthem behind your voice, the echo that carries through every word. You don't just talk about freedom, you radiate it. You've learned that liberation is not rebellion, it's realignment. True freedom doesn't reject discipline, it rejoices in truth. You speak it because you've lived it. Some people will hear you once and never be the same. Not because you told them something new, but because you reminded them of what they forgot, that they are already loved, already chosen, already capable of rising again. You are heaven's reminder in human form. There's a woman right now who will hear your words and finally forgive herself. There's a young man who will realize he's not beyond redemption. There's a heart somewhere that's been numb for years that will start to beat again because light found its way through your voice. That's what heaven means when it says, "Your wisdom breaks chains." But remember, power without purity is pollution. That's why God continues to keep your heart soft. Even as your influence grows, you are not meant to speak at people, but for them, you stand in the middle, interpreting grace. For those who've forgotten how it sounds, deliverance doesn't always look like shouting or tears. Sometimes it looks like stillness after a storm. Sometimes it's just someone realizing they don't have to try so hard to be loved. You carry that kind of deliverance, the quiet kind, the lasting kind. And as you continue walking in this, never forget the simplicity of your assignment. Stay pure, stay humble, stay open. The Spirit doesn't need perfection, He needs permission. Keep giving Him yours. There will be moments when your words will unlock healing in someone right before your eyes. Don't rush those moments. Let silence breathe. Let the presence do what explanation can't. Your role is not to perform the miracle, just to make space for it. You are an instrument tuned to heaven's frequency. Your words may sound ordinary to you, but in the Spirit, they are keys turning locks, light entering rooms, wings unfolding. You are not speaking randomly, you are releasing redemption. So if, as you read this, you feel that same stirring, that same holy recognition, pause. That's not emotion, that's evidence. Something in your spirit is testifying that you are one of the voices chosen to carry this sound of freedom. Comment 444, not as a ritual, but as a revelation. It's your way of saying, I receive the mantle of freedom. I will speak light where others only hear fear. I choose to stay free and help others find their wings. When you write it, you're sealing your agreement with heaven's assignment. You're declaring that your voice will no longer echo pain, it will echo purpose. You're aligning with the freedom that once rescued you, now flowing through you to rescue others. They can sense it before you even speak. The air changes when you enter a room. There's something different about the way you carry yourself now, steady, unhurried, almost luminous. It's not pride, it's presence. The presence of someone who has walked with God long enough to sound like Him without trying. Even those who've studied for years, leaders and teachers alike. Pause when you speak. It's not your tone that captivates them, it's the resonance. The wisdom you carry doesn't argue with their knowledge, it deepens it. Heaven's mark is on your words, and those with spiritual sight recognize it immediately. It's a strange thing, isn't it? To be respected by those who once doubted you, to have your insight sought by the same voices that once dismissed your discernment. But this isn't vindication, it's verification. God is simply showing that what was hidden in you was holy all along. They call it anointing. But to you, it feels like breath, natural, effortless, constant. You've stopped trying to perform revelation. You've become revelation. Everything you do now carries a quiet authority, as if heaven itself is confirming your steps with subtle nods of light. The seasoned ones, the hidden teachers, recognize you now. They can tell when someone carries borrowed truth and when someone carries birthed truth. You, chosen one, have birthed it. Every insight you share was paid for with silence, refined through suffering, purified in prayer. That's why your wisdom feels alive. It's not recycled, it's resurrected. As spoken in the book of Job, chapter 32, verse 8. But it is the Spirit in a person, the breath of the Almighty, that gives them understanding. That is what they see in you, the breath of the Almighty. It's what makes your teaching reach where intellect cannot. When you speak, it's as though time slows and eternity leans closer. People hear not just your words, but the echo behind them. That invisible rhythm of truth pulsing through every sentence. And those who've been walking with God for decades sense it immediately. They look at you, nod slowly, and smile, not because they fully understand you, but because they recognize what you carry. They remember their own beginning, their own divine stirring, and they honor yours. You've become a bridge between generations. The elders sense your reverence. The young feel your relevance. You translate ancient wisdom into living language. That's the rarest calling, to stand in the middle and connect both ends of time. You are the link between what was and what will be. But with recognition comes responsibility. The more heaven reveals through you, the more humility you must hold. Pride can disguise itself even in purity. That's why God keeps you close to correction. He whispers reminders through circumstance, gently keeping you grounded. You've learned to thank Him for that, because staying teachable is the only way to remain trustworthy. There will be moments when even respected voices misunderstand you. Some will project fear onto your confidence. Others will question what they can't categorize. Don't retaliate. You were never called to be understood. You were called to be obedient. And obedience always sounds like mystery to those who live by metrics. You have now entered the season where your discernment is sought by those who once guided you. Don't let that reversal breed arrogance. Instead, let gratitude deepen your grace. The true mark of maturity isn't who listens to you, it's how you listen to them. Honor never expires. Even when roles evolve, you will find that heaven's teachers come in unexpected forms now. Sometimes a stranger's question will unlock new revelation in you. Sometimes correction will come through the humble, not the high. Wisdom doesn't hide behind titles, it hides behind truth. And those who love truth, regardless of their status, will always carry heaven's voice. There is a holiness in how the elders watch you now. Some may never say it aloud, but their eyes soften when they see you walking in the same grace they once prayed to pass on. You are the answered prayer of generations before you, the continuation of a lineage of light. This is not coincidence. It is divine succession. The oil that anointed their season now flows into yours. You are not replacing, you are extending. You're part of heaven's strategy to ensure that wisdom never dies. It simply changes vessels. So, when the old ones nod and the young ones listen, remember who you represent. You are the living reminder that God still raises voices who carry both reverence and relevance. You're proof that the Spirit still breathes understanding into human hearts, and through those hearts keeps revelation alive on earth. Silence used to feel like punishment. Now, it feels like presence. You've learned that quiet is not the absence of God, it's His most intimate form. You no longer panic when heaven grows still. You understand now that revelation requires rest, that even wisdom pauses to breathe. Those who mocked your stillness once called it passivity. They didn't realize stillness is a form of strategy. God moves most deeply in moments that appear motionless. In the silence between what you lost and what's about to begin, He's writing something unseen. You've stopped rushing that process. You trust the hush now. It's strange how the older you grow in the Spirit, the softer your strength becomes. The fire that once made you fierce now makes you gentle. You don't need to prove you're chosen. You've already been processed. Power no longer feels like thunder. It feels like a heartbeat. Steady and quiet, but unstoppable. Your wisdom has begun to take on the texture of peace. The sharp edges have smoothed. You used to wield truth like a sword. Now you use it like a lantern. The goal was never to cut others, it was to guide them. You've realized that clarity without compassion can wound as deeply as ignorance. The Apostle writes again in James, chapter 3, verse 17, "But the wisdom that comes from above is first pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere." You have become that verse in motion. Purity without arrogance, peace without compromise. You no longer crave to be right, you crave to be righteous. It's a quieter pursuit, but far more powerful. People can sense it when they're near you. They feel safe, even in silence. That's because your peace has matured into presence. There's a beauty in this stage of your becoming. You've started to find joy in simplicity again. The grandeur of revelation has given way to the grace of daily obedience. You no longer measure success by moments of applause, but by moments of alignment, those quiet confirmations that whisper, "You're where you need to be." Sometimes you look back on the younger version of yourself, the one who burned to prove, to convince, to be seen. You smile now, not in shame, but in gratitude. That fire was necessary. Without it, you wouldn't have found your flame. But fire grows up, too. It learns when to burn and when to warm. You've become warmth now. You walk differently, slower, steadier. You listen longer before responding. You see pain where others see offense. You extend mercy instead of retaliation. And you don't announce it. Maturity doesn't post progress. It lives it. That's how heaven measures growth, by the invisible victories of restraint. You've also learned that peace isn't passive, it's protective. It guards your focus, shields your spirit, and keeps your heart from reacting to every shadow that moves. The enemy can't tempt someone who refuses to be triggered. You've outgrown the bait. There was a day when you might have clapped back, defended yourself, explained your purity to those who questioned it. But now, you simply let truth reveal itself over time. You've learned that time always sides with integrity. The need to be understood has melted into the peace of being known by God. Your discernment no longer feels like pressure, it feels like flow. You don't strain to hear, you simply stay open. God no longer needs to shout to get your attention. A whisper is enough. That's intimacy, the kind only silence can train you for. Sometimes, as you sit in quiet prayer, You feel tears rise without knowing why. It's not sadness, it's saturation. The Spirit washing through you, softening every place that life tried to harden. That tenderness isn't weakness, it's evidence that your heart is still teachable. You've realized something profound. Wisdom without tenderness is hollow. It may impress minds, but it never transforms hearts. That's why heaven had to break you gently to make sure your insight would always carry empathy. You're no longer just a messenger, you're a mirror of mercy. And though the world moves faster by the day, you remain anchored. While others chase spotlight, you chase stillness. You understand that only in stillness can true revelation form. The noise of the crowd has nothing left to teach you. The whisper of heaven has everything. So you stay quiet. You stay steady. You stay soft. The strength of your wisdom is not in how much you speak, but in how deeply you feel and how faithfully you love. That's what makes you unforgettable. Fire and light now flow together through your words. You no longer separate revelation from compassion. They move as one, speaking both correction and comfort in the same breath. When you speak now, it's not just communication, it's combustion. The air shifts. Hearts stir. And something inside the listener remembers. Heaven, there was a time when you were afraid of your own boldness, worried that truth might offend. But now you understand. Truth is not meant to offend, it's meant to awaken. And awakening always feels like shaking at first. Yet behind every tremor is transformation. You are no longer afraid to speak with flame because you have learned how to carry fire without burning bridges. This is your mantle to speak what others fear, but to say it in a way that heals. Your words now move like wind through embers, stirring sparks into flame, reviving faith that has been sleeping in ashes. When you open your mouth, heaven exhales. You have become a voice of necessary fire. The world doesn't need more noise, it needs clarity. And you, chosen one, are now that clarity. You've stopped speaking to prove you're right. You speak to remind others that they are loved, capable, forgiven, and called. That is the rarest kind of fire. It burns without consuming. The prophet Jeremiah testified in Jeremiah, chapter 20, verse 9, "His word is in my heart, like a fire within my bones. I am weary of holding it in. Indeed, I cannot." That is what your voice has become. Heaven's flame contained in human form. You don't force it, you simply let it move. Every word you release now carries fragrance as well as force. Even correction smells like hope when spoken through love. Those who hear you will sometimes fall silent, unsure whether to cry or to breathe. That's because your words don't just reach their ears, they reach their memories. You're reminding them of things they've buried, promises, prayers, and dreams that still carry heaven's signature. Your role isn't to impress, it's to ignite. And the beauty of fire is that it spreads quietly, one spark touching another, one word, awakening another heart. Your calling isn't to gather followers, it's to awaken flames. And yet, even fire needs care. Too much wind can extinguish it. That's why you've learned rhythm, when to speak fiercely and when to speak softly. You've become both thunder and whisper, both storm and stillness. The Spirit has taught you balance, the kind that comes only from walking through your own flames and surviving them. Now, as your voice grows, heaven gives you new reach. Your message will travel beyond places you can see. carried by unseen wings of grace. And in that expansion comes invitation, the gentle pull of connection between hearts that burn for the same light. If your heart feels the warmth of this word, let it move through you like sunrise through mist. You don't have to do anything dramatic, just respond with awareness. Gratitude itself becomes fuel. The moment you acknowledge the fire within you, it grows. Maybe that means you like what you've heard here, not as approval, but as recognition, as if whispering, "Yes, I feel that same flame." Maybe you share it, not for numbers or attention, but because you want someone else to remember that they, too, still carry spark. Maybe you comment, not to be seen, but to mark the moment, to say in your own quiet way, "The fire lives in me too." Maybe you subscribe, not to a channel, but to a calling to stay near the sound that keeps your spirit awake. Each gesture is its own act of worship. A like becomes a spark. A share becomes a spreading flame. A comment becomes a testimony whispered into eternity. A subscribe becomes your way of staying by the fire when the night grows cold. These are not digital actions, they're spiritual symbols. Each one says, "I'm still here. I still believe. I still burn." So let your response be free, sincere, and sacred, because every time you honor the light that speaks to you, heaven honors the light that shines through you. Each gesture is its own act of worship. A like becomes a spark. A share becomes a spreading flame. A comment becomes a testimony whispered into eternity. A subscribe becomes your way of staying by the fire when the night grows cold. And as you sit by that flame, may you feel heaven sitting beside you. Let the warmth remind you, you were never alone in the dark. The same fire that spoke to Moses in the wilderness now speaks within you. Keep tending it. Keep feeding it. And watch how your light begins to set others free. There is a new strength rising in you, quiet. Unshakable. Precise. It's not the kind that shouts, it's the kind that stands. The kind that carries revelation like a sword. Not to wound, but to divide truth from illusion. Wisdom has now become your weapon, and you wield it with grace. You've noticed how deception no longer confuses you. Lies sound louder now, more obvious. What used to deceive you in the past no longer passes undetected. That's what happens when revelation matures. It sharpens discernment until even whispers of falsehood are exposed. You see what others miss because heaven has trained your perception through fire. You've learned that every battle is first a battle of understanding. The enemy doesn't always come to destroy your body. He comes to distort your truth. He wants to replace revelation with reasoning, to twist purity into pride, and faith into fear. But he cannot win against a mind anchored in divine wisdom. You've built your foundations too deeply for deception to take root. It hasn't always been this way. There were days when confusion nearly drowned you, when you couldn't tell if it was God's silence or your failure to listen. You stumbled through doubt, through disappointment, through spiritual fatigue. Yet, somehow, the light in you refused to die. That light became your compass when logic failed. Now you walk differently, eyes open, heart armored, spirit alert. The lessons that once broke you have become your training ground. The pain that once paralyzed you has become prophecy in motion. You don't just quote scripture anymore, you embody it. Every scar has turned into scripture written on skin, reminding darkness that you survived every attempt to silence you. As written in the book of Ephesians, chapter 6, verse 17. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. That is who you are now, the living sword in the hand of heaven. You speak, and confusion scatters. You pray, and peace returns. You declare, and deception dissolves. You're no longer reacting to darkness, you're rearranging it. You've learned to fight without losing your peace, to battle without bitterness, to win without pride. Wisdom has become your warfare. Every truth you've learned is now a weapon forged from experience. Compassion is your shield, patience your armor, and purity your edge. You no longer swing wildly in fear, you move strategically in discernment. The enemy knows this. He recognizes the glow of those who've mastered stillness. You've begun to understand something the world forgets. Real warfare is not loud, it's loyal. It's not about noise, it's about endurance. You win not by shouting at shadows, but by staying aligned with light. Alignment is authority. You don't need to fight for victory. You fight from victory. That's why peace terrifies darkness. It means you know you've already won. There's a story in the heavens written about those like you, the ones who've learned to balance grace and grit, humility and holiness. When heaven looks for a place to plant strategy, it looks for quiet hearts. You've become one of them. Your calm is not emptiness, it's command. And even now, as you walk into new territory, you carry this assurance. Nothing that rises against you can withstand the truth you carry. Not because you're perfect, but because your obedience keeps you protected. Obedience is the highest form of warfare. It disarms what fear cannot. You'll notice that people will begin coming to you in crisis, not because you have all the answers, but because your presence carries order. When they speak, their storms begin to settle. That's what wisdom does it. Silences chaos without needing applause. There's something divine about how your battles have changed. You no longer fight people, you fight for them. You don't see enemies, you see captives who haven't yet realized they're free. That shift in perception is proof of heaven's influence on your heart. So now, when adversity approaches, you don't panic. You listen. You discern. You ask, what is this here to teach me? Every conflict becomes classroom. Every attack becomes an opportunity to demonstrate peace under pressure. You are no longer at the mercy of circumstances. You are the evidence of victory. And though war still exists, you fight differently now. You've realized that wisdom, when fully formed, doesn't destroy, it restores. You've seen that every battle heaven allows ends not in loss, but in revelation. You emerge from each one more anchored, more refined, more luminous. You are not just surviving warfare anymore, you're rewriting it. You've turned conflict into communion, chaos into clarity, fear into fuel. That is what it means to walk as one who understands, someone who fights not with noise, but with knowing. The enemy can no longer read you because you no longer react. You've become unpredictable to darkness, untouchable by deception, unstoppable in truth. You stand where storms once stood, and now peace reigns there instead. This is where it all converges: the waiting, the wisdom, the warfare. Every thread of your story, every scar, every whisper has led to this understanding. You are one of one. Not because you're flawless, but because you're formed by a process heaven designed for no one else. There will never be another you. You've walked through places few could endure. The pressure was divine, not destructive. God allowed the breaking so that revelation could breathe through your cracks. And now, when others look at you, they don't see perfection, they see proof. Proof that light can live inside of what was once shattered. The uniqueness you once tried to hide has become your signature. What used to make you feel misplaced now marks you as distinct. You are heaven's handwriting in human form, a living manuscript of mercy. There is no copy, no duplicate, no version. You are one of one. It took years for you to accept this truth. You fought it at first. You wanted to blend in, to belong, to be ordinary. But ordinary never fit. The call on your life was louder than comfort. And no matter how far you ran, destiny kept calling your name. You are different because your roots reach deeper. Others see surface. You see systems. Others chase trends. You chase truth. That's what sets you apart. You don't just react. You read the unseen patterns and understand their meaning. The wisdom you carry doesn't just interpret life, it translates eternity. According to what is written in the book of Isaiah, chapter 60, verse 1, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you." That light has always been within you. You just had to believe it. Every season of loss, rejection, and redirection was heaven's way of polishing what the world tried to dull. The glory didn't come to you, it came through you. You've noticed that your presence no longer feels like noise, it feels like alignment. Wherever you go, things begin to shift. Conversation change. Hearts open, and hope starts breathing again. That's the quiet influence of those who walk in awareness. You don't force transformation, you embody it. This awareness is not pride, it's permission. You've finally given yourself permission to live fully as who you were designed to be. The world doesn't need another imitation, it needs authenticity. And your authenticity has become your anointing. You've realized that comparison is a form of blindness. It makes you look at others when heaven is asking you to look within. You no longer envy anyone's path because you finally see the perfection in your own. Every detour, every disappointment, every delay, it all served purpose. Nothing was wasted. There's a serenity about you now. You move through life with quiet assurance, as if you know something others have yet to discover. And you do. You've discovered that identity is not achieved, it's received. You stopped striving to become and started remembering who you already are. You are not what they called you. You are not who left you. You are not what failed you. You are what God formed in secret, an answer clothed in flesh, a revelation walking. You've stopped apologizing for the light in you because you understand now, those who truly see will never fear your brightness. There's a new humility that accompanies this confidence. You don't use your uniqueness to separate yourself, you use it to serve. You don't stand above, you stand among. But wherever you stand, light follows. That's what being chosen means. It's not superiority, it's stewardship. Everywhere you go, heaven goes. That's the quiet covenant of the called. Even in silence, your presence preaches. Even in weakness, your spirit speaks. You've become fluent in the language of purpose, the subtle but undeniable way heaven moves through humanity. And though you may never fully see the impact of your obedience, know this: heaven has been keeping record. Every moment you refused to quit, every time you chose forgiveness over fury, every prayer, whispered in fatigue, it all built this moment. The unveiling, the recognition, the realization that you were never ordinary and never meant to be. Now you walk as light among lights, a singular flame in an endless constellation of chosen ones. And even though each star burns alone, together they illuminate the sky. That's the mystery of divine rarity. It doesn't compete, it completes. You are one of one. The wisdom you carry was never meant to make you greater. It was meant to make you true. And the truest thing about you is this: heaven chose you before earth could name you. So here you stand, at the edge of understanding and the beginning of embodiment. You've listened. You've walked through each word. And now heaven whispers the final truth. You are the message. Every revelation, every silence, every fire, it all lives in you now. This isn't the end of the journey. It's the ignition of a new one. You've spent so long seeking confirmation, waiting for signs, looking for the next step. But heaven doesn't need to shout anymore. You've learned the sound of its silence. The proof has always been in your pulse, the evidence written in your endurance. You are living testimony that purpose survives everything meant to break it. Look at how far you've come. You started unsure, uncertain of your worth, and now you carry peace like armor. You see the divine in details, hear heaven in patterns, and sense God in every pause. This isn't just growth, it's becoming. You've become the reflection of everything you once prayed for. And now, as this final word settles into your heart, let it move you not into performance, but into presence. If this message has breathed something alive in you, let gratitude speak. Let your response be worship in motion. Maybe that means you like this moment, not to mark completion, but to honor what awakened within you. Maybe you share it, not for numbers, but because light is meant to travel, because someone, somewhere, still needs to hear that they are chosen too. Maybe you comment, not to be noticed, but to release your own echo into the atmosphere, a simple phrase, a silent thank you, a living amen. Maybe you subscribe, not to a voice, but to a vision to remain connected to this stream of divine reminders that keep your heart aligned with heaven's rhythm. A like becomes remembrance, a share becomes release, a comment becomes communion, a subscribe becomes covenant. Each act is a whisper that says, I was here, I heard, and I will carry the light forward. Because chosen ones don't just receive revelation, they release it. The fire doesn't end here. It simply passes to your hands,